Hi, my name is Lori Dobson. So this is a hard truth to come to, but I'll be damned if I'm going to be wringing my hands all through the primary season and watching Bernie subject himself and us to the abuses that are going to start raining down on him, and actively rigging the system against him and doing nothing but gently, mildly remonstrating, making light of the insults coming his way. This feels abusive of me. Bells are going off in my head, and it feels as though it may be time for me to bail out from my support of him. He has promised that he is the candidate to beat Donald Trump, and I just don't see how exactly in what fight he's bringing. He's not bringing game to the game. He says things with emphasis. The talking points he delivers very forcefully. They're hammered to us. We certainly know them to the point where we can recite them with him. And that's okay as far as it goes. If he backs it up with a fight, that's visibly presented in front of him, and that he fights against things directly that are unfair or corrupt. And we see it. We see him doing it. And to be perfectly fair to him, he has proposed positive things, and he's been clear about wanting to keep it from being personal. But you don't make any points just being nice. The distinction is you don't have to be nice, but you do have to be good. And I think that distinction is not one he seems to have clearly in his vocabulary or his understanding. No other century has ever had someone that seemed to be so focused on niceness versus right action. He speaks the right action, but we don't see him delivering on the fight part of that right action. Trump is certainly not nice, and that's not the way to stand up to him. In fact, if Bernie takes a whipping from Trump the way he did with Hillary, with all of her abuses towards him, personal insults, just enjoys them, even though he supported her in rallies, or if he doesn't stand up to Trump the way he didn't stand up to Warren when she accused Bernie of being sexist, and then he allowed her to walk with him in the march the next day, the day after, or Biden when he apologized to Biden because one of his campaign people, supporters, surrogates, actually, was writing about a piece about Biden being corrupt, and Bernie's refused to call him corrupt, even though it was a clear case of it in the Ukraine and other places. If he just takes that kind of abuse from Trump, that same kind, like he's suffered in the media, it'll just be the most miserable spectacle that I can imagine. A fall from grace and that order of magnitude would just be burned into all of our souls if we saw him doing that with Trump, publicly, not standing up for what's right and letting Trump just destroy him, create a massive number of defeated supporters, and I just see them feeling sold down the river into bondage by him, and the futility of that effort, I think, would sear into their souls. It's such a repeat of 2016. This 2020 now is, if it's just a recreation of that experience, it will not endear him to anyone. It will not guarantee him a place in history. He'll look like a failed politician, someone who couldn't live up to himself. And so anyway, this is the time he has to rise up. He has to risk the loss maybe of his being viewed as an adorable grandfather or doting person, kindly gentleman, And but I feel that he's chosen another path here. He has to be a river to his people. He has to be what we need him to be, what the people need him to be. He chose it, and he has to continue with it. And diseases of despair are pretty rampant right now. But watching Bernie immolate himself would be this in this fire of self-abnegation. I just see it consuming all of us in that fire of self-denial, and it's not exactly the vision that I had hoped for with Bernie when I first believed in him. The fact that I even contemplate this kind of self-denial of myself to let him have his kindly nature this far along, that I would be convinced by him or go along with him in this way that he's doing it. It just shows me that he's appealing to a very low level of masochism inside of me, that I'm, willing to suffer hurt on his behalf. It's not healthy. It's not a good example of giving myself some boundaries. And I actually have been hurt by Bernie in a very real way. I supported, I protested his support of Hillary in a rally on November 1st, 2016 in Portland, Maine. He was helping her, and I had been a Bernie candidate, and when he decided not to fight anymore and just to fall into her camp, I felt the need to continue with the revolution he called for, and the only person who was doing that was Jill Stein at the time. So I just made a rather elegant protest, in a quiet way, by waving a green scarf, Jill Stein support, in the back of the room. Then I wanted to go to the front of the room, and I put the scarf down, and I was quiet at the time, but he kept talking and didn't break stride when two policemen came up, insisted that I leave, and then ended up dragging me out and arresting me. And he just never, it was though I didn't exist. He was in some sort of mesmerized state, talking about the virtues of Hillary and why we had to vote for her, and it was so galling. It was completely gross, and I was later offered the option of, I had someone defend me for free, and I had the option of fighting it, and I decided just not to. I didn't need to fight Bernie. I didn't take it personally that way. I just felt ashamed on his behalf in a way, just embarrassed that that's who he was willing to become, to have the campaign become. It was such a small thing, and it was such a great thing, and I decided at that point I would just, dem exit, hashtag dem exit, and just become someone who didn't go back there. But I have come back to Bernie this time, despite this rough treatment, and I am guarded. There's nobody else who's viable, and I wish there was. Tulsi was politically assassinated right off the bat. She showed some spine. She supported Bernie, and she fought against Warren and against Kamala and against Hillary, and she showed courage. Her policies are somewhat compromised, like Bernie's. They're not great across the board. And I wish she could prevail on her own. But I do kind of hold out for her being part of a cabinet of Bernie's. Here I am fancifully thinking that he's going to make it, doing things the way he is, but it's not It's not the real world. I'm operating in fantasy, and it's time to come to grips with that. So I have decided to offer conditional support to Sanders, and to the extent that if he shows some stomach for the fight, that and he's willing to represent our interests all the way, then I will support him. But so far, I'm not convinced, and I'm hanging in there, but it's slipping away. So every time I see the need for him to punch through when he doesn't, and instead he pulls his punches, it's just like before. And he can't assume that we're naive to him now anymore, because we saw it last time we saw Iowa. It's a huge red flag. And it's a reminder of the stolen votes that he didn't fight for back then. Now here we are again. Similar, identical, and they're playing the same way, and we're playing the same way. It's just deja vu, but it's distressing. It's because I feel like I'm not getting something here. I have to come to terms with, and I know I, like a lot of people anyway, but Bernie has now become sort of an unknown and opaque to me now, and not trustworthy. And I'm willing to give him a little rope to see if he would persist in his leadership. But I haven't seen anything except some vague words about it being a bad day for democracy after Iowa. And I focus kind of on that he's content to lay it down, and that his focus is on distress over losing the Senate race. He seems to care deeply about the foregone conclusion of impeachment. And he's not running for Senate; he's running for president. I could care about the impeachment. It was not going to happen. So I believe in Bernie's platform, and I myself have run as a progressive anti-war candidate in 3 races: 2 for state rep in 2002, 2016, and 1 for independent for U.S. Senate. And Sanders, I just believe there was a real shot at getting a progressive agenda to lead the party. The devastation I felt when he declined to go forward and bowed to Hillary is something I still struggle to live down. I voted for Jill Stein, who had a better policy, but I knew that wouldn't be enough support for her to succeed, just like my own race in 2008. It's a strange thing to run for a race for peace and justice causes when you know you can't win, but you hope that your platform, you hope that policies you put forward will make a difference. So I'm kind of banking on future gains, and seeing Sanders doing all this now as a fairly effective, making his points as a Democrat, has been such a lure to me to think the time has finally come. Like Killer Mike said, the time is now, and so compelling. And who could not be moved to believe that might actually come to pass for everybody? Those who aren't scared of what they might lose, but what they might gain, and what we could all gain. It just seems like worth it. I don't want to buy into the cynicism now that the fight is on, like the man in the arena who deserves credit, because the rest of us are comfortable looking around and finding the fault. And I know from being in a race how that is. It's all on you. And so I excuse him to a large degree. A lot of people do. But it's just not excusable what's happening right now. If he will not fight, he is either showing that he's not willing or he's not capable. That's just weakness. It's looks like a distaste for struggle. So how can that kind of temperament prevail? He says he can beat Trump, but that's not the way you beat Trump. You don't just do it by saying those things that he's told us. He's just got to go tooth and nail at the guy. We deserve to see that fight, and if he can't do it, he's got to be honest. I can't see going through this whole primary, 50 states. Well, he won't go through all of them, but I mean, Jesus. It's just too much. I say this, I want to believe I want to believe in the potential that there's something he knows about this docileness in the face of all that sadism of theirs. You know, I mean, is he trying to do some sort of crucifixion and make a martyr out of himself? I don't think that's going to work. Is that all he really is aiming for? Does he really not believe in himself? Because I do. So many people do. We're not doing this just as an exercise. Maybe he wants to advance a strong vice president, but it won't happen without him. So I just think for, as unpleasant as it may be for him, he's in the ring and he's got to put the gloves on. And I'm willing to put myself in the ring for what's right, and I have for him, then he had better do the same. There's just no more excuses. It's time for battle, Bernie.